Hello, everyone. Welcome to You'll Probably Agree. Today, from Jeff York Characters and Caricatures and the Establishing Shot, we have Jeff York on, and we are talking. Last week, we talked about bad movies from good directors. Well, here's something a little different. Here are two overlooked films from great directors. Although I will say, Frenzy, when I looked it up, critically, it was not overlooked, but I think historically, audiences didn't quite appreciate it. But we're talking about that movie, and then afterwards, we're going to talk about Steven Spielberg's AI. And before we get into, well, no, you know what? We'll talk about it first, and then I'll play the clip from the movie. So, Jeff, could you give us because you were the one who suggested Frenzy, and when I mentioned to everyone, oh, I'm doing a Hitchcock movie, I said Frenzy. They're like, "What's Frenzy?" You know,
Exactly. That's one
so
of the reasons
yeah,
I suggested it.
yeah.
Um, it's a 1972 thriller directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It's his penultimate feature film of
Mhm.
his extensive career, which started back in the 30s. And it comes with, a certain amount of novelty and note to it is from the fact that it's shot back in England, which Hitchcock had not been to, as sort of a feature that just took place in his home town for a long time, probably I think since he left there. But I could be wrong on that. But nonetheless, he had not been doing a movie that was centered around the comings and goings in London for decades, at least that I recall. And the screenplay was by Anthony Shaffer, who was a famous playwright and screenwriter at the time. He had written Sleuth, which was a big hit across the globe that same year. So he was having quite the year himself. And this was considered to be more than anything, I think at the time, and maybe to some degree in the sense of historical context, Alfred Hitchcock's attempt, and I think a very successful one by and large, to place itself in sort of the modernity of the 70s where there was more violence,
Mhm.
there was material that was more sort of controversial, obviously nudity and themes of sex and things like that were being talked about and centered around movies for quite some time, since the mid to late 60s going into the 70s, of course. And this film deals with not only a serial killer, which was rather novel at the time, but it deals with a rapist. It deals with women being killed, so there's misogyny here. It's also a film which is a lot about the inadequacy and the sort of wimpiness, if you will, or insecurity. Maybe that's the more technical psychological term of masculinity in men.
Mm.
Um, and it had sort of an ugliness to it. I think this is, despite Hitchcock's sensibilities that always sort of seem to lend themselves to the art of cinema, as it were. Even if you look at Psycho, the shower scene is a terribly violent and awful scene to watch, and it has freaked people out for decades. And yet it's very beautifully shot. It's
Yeah.
artistic, and the way Saul Bass designed it for him, and all the cuts and everything is done. It's art. I mean, it truly is the art of cinema. This, one of the women that we see killed is
Mhm.
killed in close up, and it takes a
Mhm.
long time. As strangulation takes a while to kill people, and the murderer in this is a very natty, well dressed British greengrocer kind of entrepreneur who's a successful chain of grocery stores and fruit markets and stuff, and always nattily dressed. And he kills her with his necktie, which is also clever how they do a
Mhm.
little bit of the takeoff almost on Vertigo in the poster for Hitchcock's Frenzy, with this sort of spiral of terror going around like they did in Vertigo. But if you look closely at it, it's actually a necktie. But that's shown in gross graphic close up. We actually see the murder victim's tongue like starting to
Yeah.
stick as she's losing her air, and it's horrible to watch, even
Yeah.
by, I think, today's standards. So Hitchcock was pushing his reputation, pushing his art, if you will, pushing his sort of ability to sort of adapt, and this was coming off of a couple films that were maybe considered a little too quaint, or maybe not quite as connecting with audiences as he had in the late 50s into the 60s, with things like Rear Window and Vertigo and The Birds and some of those kind of things that were Psycho, obviously, fits in that time period as well, which are big hits. But anyway, that's where it is. But most people don't think of it today, because I don't think they think of really Hitchcock beyond Psycho. Maybe The Birds.
Mhm.
They don't
Mhm.
remember that, oh, yeah, that's right, he did Torn Curtain and he did Topaz. And This was, I think, his last, terrific film, if not a great.
Mhm.
I think it maybe is just a little short on greatness on certain respects that we'll maybe get into, obviously. But for me, it shouldn't be a forgotten film because, and I don't think it comes up that much in conversation these days because there's so many great ones to talk about. Obviously, that critics and fans and such will prefer to discuss. But at the same time, I think this is a very well done film, a very interesting part of his oeuvre, and one that I think merits discussion. And that's why I suggested it to you, especially since you said you hadn't seen it. And
Yeah.
I'll talk with you, it's one of my favorite of films, though I don't think it's quite as a classic as some of the greater films in his career. But I think this is an exceptional one that I'm glad we're talking about.
Yeah. I'm glad you referenced this movie because I watched it, and I would say by the middle acts, well, no, even early on, I was really digging it, and I
Yeah.
loved the movie. I
Oh,
thought it was
wonderful. I
fantastic. Yeah,
love it. Oh, I'm so
because
glad, Mike.
this,
That makes the show so much easier.
no, I really did, and I'm not just saying it just to be nice. I did love it because this was I have a little confession to make. When I watched this movie, I visited my parents for the weekend, left my house, went to their house to go visit them. And I'm like, well, you know what? Hitchcock, he's not too bad. I'm going to watch this movie with my mom.
Oh, wow.
And let's put up the spoilers here.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Blamey, who's the protagonist of the film, his ex-wife, sort of
Yeah.
ex-wife, I think,
Right.
like on paper, they're still married.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. She gets killed horrifically
Oh my God, yeah.
with
It's an amazing scene.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, well, they're not gonna show nudity, and then bam, there's like a close up of a body double's breasts,
Yeah.
and the thing that makes those older movies so much more terrifying than newer ones is that there isn't too much music in it or too
Right.
much cutting. It's very long and
Yes.
painful. Like the only movie I can think of within like the last 20 years that has had a rape scene as horrific as the ones in this film that uses no cutting almost is Irreversible.
Exactly. In fact,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Mike.
Yeah.
I think Irreversible is sort of the, for lack of a better term, gold standard of horrific rape scenes in it. But I think I would put this one probably second because it goes on for a while. It's
Mhm.
done in close up. We're getting to know sort of each of these characters as they're kind of going through this, dare I say, almost a negotiation between how much is my life in danger? Am I just rejecting a cad, trying to get him off me, to, oh my God, he's going to hurt me, to, oh shit, he's now going to kill me.
Yeah.
And the terror that goes on Brenda Blaney's face, played by a very good actress, Barbara Lee Hunt, is terrific. And Barry Foster playing the villain in it, Bob Russ, gives a very, very tough performance. He's not asking for sympathy for his character. He's willing to play these awful moments, and he plays them viciously. It's an uncompromising performance, and that whole scene really is terribly upsetting. But
Yeah.
but here's what I would just share with the viewers too, if they're watching this, since we've already sort of given away this one spoiler. What makes this so interesting, though, is not only the reasons and the things you're just talking about, and Mike's experience watching it with his mom. But,
Hey, Mom, let's watch a Hitchcock
hey,
movie.
let's
Oh, I
watch
love
this. Oh my
Hitchcock.
gosh. Oh, he's wonderful. What?
Lovely,
They
lovely.
did kill a little dog in Rear Window. Let's not forget that. Come on, people. But what I love about this movie is even in scenes like that where it's truly disturbing, or the black humor where he's got to break the finger to get
Yeah.
in the potato truck.
And then there's like a scene, there's a shot Tarantino would love in that movie where her dead foot like gets in his
Yes,
face.
yes.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
he's just
as
like,
awful as all those kind of things are, let
Yeah.
alone the ridiculous amounts of god awful food that the chief inspector, played by Alec McCowan, is getting served to by his wife.
that was the one part that kind of
I-
turned me off because
I
there's like
think-
horrific rape, and then it's like, ooh, my wife's cooking is bad. And I'm
I
like,
know, well,
this
it's
is
there
out
for
of
comic
place.
relief, but I also
Yeah.
think it's there to echo a little bit of the grotesqueries of
Yeah.
life. Like, for example, Chief Inspector Timothy Oxford, as he's called, he couldn't be more posh than being named Inspector Oxford.
Yeah.
But he's dealing with all these terrible crimes in this very dark world of murder and menace and all that. And yet, for him, these concoctions that his wife is cooking up from that is supposed to be the food of a gourmand
Yeah, it's
are
like
real
gourmet and
disgusting, and they're all like
stuff.
kind of awful dissected body parts too that we're kind of watching here. So it's a parallel. But that's the thing that I was just going to say makes this movie, I think, so clever in the very much of the Hitchcock senses. There are all kinds of parallels, and there's a lot going on in all these scenes. Not only that, it's Blaney's wife, but it's done with a tie that is the exact same tie that we see John Finch as Blaney tying
Yep.
in the first scene. And there are parallels between the two men. And Mrs. Blaney doesn't like her husband much, and she's fighting him. And
Yeah.
then here she's fighting his best friend, who is actually who's the murderer, and then setting his best friend up to take the fall for this. So there's all kinds of interesting parallels between the masculinity and who's got the power, and men versus women, and
Mhm.
women sort of laughing at men, and men feeling emasculated. Blaney doesn't have money. He doesn't even have a job. He has to borrow money from Rusk, and then Rusk uses that to lord over him, sort of as the alpha male that he is. Again, the grotesque food versus the grotesque crime scenes that Hitchcock doesn't blanch from showing either one of us. I mean,
Yeah.
some of those things coming out of those dishes are just like,
Oh yeah, like the fish.
almost
It,
like, I
yeah,
dare you to find this any less grotesque than
that's
this
actually pretty
man.
good.
But everybody's
That's,
going probably up the aisles to vomit over the quails that's not undercooked that he's being
or
served.
the fish that. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
the
the
fish.
quails.
Oh
The
my God.
quails look like. Is it me or do the quails look like the chicken from Eraserhead?
Yeah,
A little bit, like
totally.
yeah,
Totally. It was like that was something you don't want to even look at, let alone put anywhere near your mouth. And I also
yeah,
think it's also about sort of this British, which is again why I think he went back to Britain for it.
yeah,
It's this sense of decorum that they always must have.
yeah,
Clearly, the Oxford has a loving wife, and she's trying to impress him, and she's trying to do something different to
yeah,
spice up their marriage. But even though Vivian Merchant is hilarious and she's sweet and she's little, he can't tell her that he doesn't want to eat this. He's all
yeah,
like, "Ugh," and he's like trying to hide it and pretend he's,
yeah.
and he's waffling about it and trying to tell her about his day, and his night at home with her is becoming worse for him. But I just love the fact that they all stand on this sort of ceremony of the stiff upper lip and a sense of elegance, and it's all very, very tragic. I mean, even the last line is such a theatrical, clever line, and it's about propriety. It's like,
Yeah,
Mr. Rusk, why, Mr. Rusk, you're not wearing your tie. It's just
yeah,
such like, you are not appropriate. You are, not a dignified gentleman, which is such a
yeah.
British thing. But that's what I think gives it a lot of sense of black comedy.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this movie, and it's like a point of critique,
Yeah.
but it's also sort of like it goes into the mindset of the period and of the killer is that
Mhm.
women aren't exactly treated fairly in this movie.
No,
They're
that's
kind of
right. That's
treated
right.
just like sexual objects or the
Yep.
wife who cooks dinner. But the thing is, if you get into Rusk's mind, that's kind of how he sees women.
Yes, that's
He
right.
just wants to have sex with them and then murder them, or not even sex. He wants to rape them and murder
Yeah.
them.
I mean, he's a very hostile person. He's got a
Yeah.
lot of misogyny to it. I mean, and even, Blaney is a little bit of an old school Brit in it,
Yeah.
masculine, and he's, got his things, and he doesn't like sort of having a woman stand up to him and stuff like that. And he's flirting with the barkeep, which is also another sort of course, you go to the barkeep woman for your mistress,
Yeah.
Um, but and even the chief inspector is a little afraid of his wife, even though she's not in a position of sort of running the world for him, but in some respects she runs the home.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's very much a little having making a comment on that, on not only how sexist the times still are and were then, and
Yeah.
especially with a lot of the class system that goes along with sexism in a country like that. But showing us that here we are in the 70s, and we think we've progressed so much and the world is so evolved, and yet it hasn't. It's
Yeah.
oftentimes very base, and often as as crude as it was maybe back in the caveman times. And men think that, their things were to dominate and to kill and to, this, that, and the other thing. And all through the centuries, women have always been kept down, and that didn't change all that much. Well, into the 70s, women couldn't get credit cards until the 70s. Yeah. Women didn't have the right to vote, until the suffrage movement and things like that. So, women's progress has taken a while. And this movie, I think, to your point, Mike, is very much making a comment about that. Here we are, we think we're in the modern 70s, and this is a modern Hitchcock film. Mm-hmm. And yet he's saying, yeah, we may be modern, and maybe I'll show a little more violence or deal with a more unseemly thing like this serial killer in modern times and show him very explicitly. But a lot of it is just as same as all the old films that Hitchcock did back in the 30s.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple notes on that. One is the movie kind of does tie to Alfred Hitchcock's problematic past with women. I mean, yes. Tippi Hedren quit the film industry because of the way he treated her. So I think a lot of it was his mindset, and a lot of it was also he's kind of confessing in a way. He's like, look, I know I'm thinking the wrong way, but this is the way it is, and and we haven't changed much. I mean, we have 3 rapists in the White House, the president, we have Kavanaugh, and I'm sure there's another one in there, and we haven't gone far from that, and who's always the one who are violent? It's always men. It's always white, angry men with guns who go and kill people, not women, and this movie kind of resembles how men are violent psychopaths and kind of detached from empathy. There's the one scene where there's 2 people sitting in a pub and they're talking about this necktie murderer. And then one of them says he rapes them. And then the other guy goes, yeah, well, you got to give him something, or some disgusting, off color comment. And I don't know if that was supposed to be funny at the time, but
I don't think it's supposed to be funny. Yeah. I think it's a commentary, but I think what Hitchcock and Anthony Shaffer in writing that line are doing in that kind of theme is the misogyny may have extremes along the line, but it's still all misogyny, know. And I think this is showing that as well, that even today we talk about sex workers and people like that a lot of times who we think are third-rate citizens and worthy of derision, or whatever happens to them, they've got it coming. I mean, I think it was one of the interesting things about the award season run of Honora, that every time, including on the Oscars, that they talked about the sex workers. And I would argue that in that movie, Honora was sort of in control of her job and how she handled men, and easily parting men from their money. But yet, according to the old school sort of oligarch thing, she was just a prostitute or a whore or whatever they wanted to call her. And I think part of the movie was that they came to see her as a person, and that's part of the reason that long extended chase scene worked on them as well as us. Is we saw all those people as not just that person's a hitman, that person's a sex worker. They're human beings, and they shouldn't necessarily only be defined by what their task is or what their job is. There's more to them. Same here, though. It's like it's not that far from the pub to the murder scene when you've got men who think of women as having it coming or deserve it.
And this movie's a lot like the spiritual successor to Psycho. It's
first off in the name Psycho. I mean, it's very similar.
Yeah. Because in both films, you have something that happens in the middle act you don't see coming, unless you look at the poster for Frenzy. But in the middle act, you find out that Bob Rusk is actually the necktie murderer.
Right.
Kind of like how in Psycho you find out, in the middle act, Janet Leigh gets killed.
That's right.
And then
you think the main character suddenly is out of the picture. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And we know it. I mean, and we could tell it's obviously Anthony Perkins in it. And in that movie where the killer was kind of sympathetic and you could see how his mom screwed him up mentally, this one says, no, there is no sympathy, no empathy towards this man. He is like Michael Myers. He's just a machine that rapes and kills. Well, Michael Myers didn't rape, but he just kills. And there should be,
But isn't it interesting, Mike, for the first to your point, to the first half hour, he seems like a good friend.
Yeah.
He's giving Blaney money. He's well dressed. He's very natty. I mean, his tie and
Yeah.
his tie pin, and these you know Savile Row suits, and Carnaby Street and everything else. I mean, this man's got his shit together, and he's very respected in the community and all that. And then he turns out to be this terrible person, and from there on, you can't look at him the same. But he, continues to do terrible things, even though he pretends to be Blaney's friend, and he sets the police after him, and he's continually trying to stand on decorum, even when he goes into that roadside diner to get washed up and sort of get back after getting his necktie pin from the back of the potato truck. He's still sort of dressing himself and making his hair look good, and making sure he's got a certain dignity and bearing as he walks into this lower class, working class joint.
Yes.
So he's playing with those kind of things as well. But to your point, it's a big change where you think he might be the good guy. You think he might be a good character at first. It's not really certain that Blaney maybe he is that guy, because he's not likable. I mean, in many respects, he's kind of a hothead, and he's a prick, and Finch doesn't play him as sympathetically as certain people would have. By the way, just a little bit of interesting for you. When I remember first seeing this movie in the late 70s, I think I saw it somewhere on a revival house or something, but I kept thinking Barry Foster had a certain Michael Caine quality to him with the reddish hair and all that kind of stuff. Alfred Hitchcock offered the role to Michael Caine.
That's correct.
But Michael Caine didn't want to play him.
He thought it was disgusting. Yeah, he didn't want to do it.
Disgusting material, and I didn't want to play that character. Plus, he was kind of getting used to playing good guys at that point, or heroes.
And then he did Dress to Kill, like
I know, which was later. I know, it's so funny. It's like, the change of time and everything. But that's such a funny. I don't remember that he did Dress to Kill, but
yeah,
but it's very clever, and it's very low key. I mean, the one thing I think is very interesting about it too is Hitchcock very rarely oversells anything, and that's kind of there's that one great scene where, the woman, the other woman who's being lured into the apartment, and we follow up the who's a good character, that's the other connection to Blaney, and we see her go in, and Rusk is being charming, and the camera goes up with them, and as he takes her into the apartment, we know what's going to happen, and the camera just drifts away back down the stairs and out into the street until really it's almost like even if we could hear her screams, they're drowned out by the noise and the activity of the bustle and hustle of the London streets. It's a wonderful little sort of reminder of all this stuff is happening in broad daylight. It's happening right under our noses, and maybe we see it, maybe we don't. But a lot of times these people are using these sort of camouflages to their advantage, because people don't expect a good guy to do that to women. Oh, he's taking me up to his apartment to talk to me. He's not a bad guy. Oh, look at how well dressed he is. He's wearing a tie. Or, I'm doing it in my apartment knowing that I can get away with it because nobody will hear with all the sounds of the city.
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned that, because we actually have a little clip from that scene right here.
Nice.
Got a place to stay?
I don't know if you know, Babs, but you're my type of woman.
And the
like
brilliant,
I'll just say they planned this. No,
well, it's like I knew that shot was going to come up because it's like the most ubiquitous part of the movie.
Yeah, it's a very good shot.
The brilliant thing with it is that Hitchcock doesn't just go for graphic violence to shock and kill. As a matter of fact, he uses the one first graphic scene, and you think, oh no, here we go again. But instead, it's even scarier, because he's pulling away, because in a way we kind of ignore the horrible things that are going around us so we can go about our day. And the way the sound is designed too, I think, is really smart, because you could hear all the cars going by and all that, but then the sound just zeroes out when he says got a place to stay, as if you kind of know, like, she's going to die. Here's this monster, and like the whole world around us has stopped, but she doesn't know that yet. And I
Yeah.
think that's the brilliance of that scene. Like Hitchcock was, I mean, he was revolutionary when it came with the camera. I mean, there was even some homages to Psycho. Like there's a shot where like a girl's eyes are like like bulging open, and it's kind of like the eye from the shower scene in Psycho. And he kind of
Mhm.
repeats his motifs, but he plays it up, and he, like you said earlier, he pushes the envelope where he's making a thriller where you think you're going to see a Hitchcockian thriller, and you do, but at the same time, he's kind of making a semi-exploitation film, and it's one that uh, you're not going to be ready for. And even today, it still holds up with how disturbing it is. And he's brilliant with the camera. I especially love that scene with Rusk where he's like on the roof of his apartment or whatever, the balcony, and he's talking to Blaney, and you have like the gray, kind of ugly streets of London there. But when you see him, he's full of color and
Mhm.
flowers, and it kind of looks like this, kind of like, oh, I want to be like that guy. Like that's kind of what it's trying to represent. But really, he's just the ugliness that's just hiding underneath the facade of beauty.
Well said. In fact, I
Yeah.
think even from the get-go with the clear sort of press conference to let the British politician sort of boast and run a victory lap about, we're going to clean up this area and we're going to do all these wonderful things. And then, of course, this corpse floats by nature that disrupts it. And all these people, dressed in their bowler hats and looking very, very British and classy and stuff like that. And of course, it's very funny that one of those is Alfred Hitchcock doing his cameo, with the bowler hat, and he's looking around like, oh, they're all very curious to see what's going on when this body washes up. But and the coda to that is that at the end, the person, the handler whispers to him, we've got to get you out of here. You don't want to be part of this. So to your point, it's a lot of surface stuff, and what seems to be a lovely presentation is quickly rendered ugly. Again, to your point, I love that Rusk is always well dressed. He always looks like the brightest, most together person in there, and yet he's this vicious killer. And I also think it's interesting too, and you reminded me when you showed that clip just now, but Anna Massey, who is playing Babs Milligan in it, as well as Barbara Lee Hunt, they're not floozies. They're not like, oh, a typical bird. Maybe she was asking for a prostitute, that kind of stuff that they've sort of thrown at the Jack the Ripper women forever and a day. And there's a really good book called The Five about who those 5 victims of Jack the Ripper really were. And it was about economic times, and they weren't necessarily always prostitutes, or maybe they just did it because they were at their rope's end. But here, the 2 women are fairly respectable. I mean, they have jobs, and they're fighting off the world around them, paying their own way. Men, I mean, the character of Brenda that Barbara Lee Hunt plays has her own matchmaking business, and which is interesting. That I love that as a setup, that they realize that Bob Rusk has some particular tastes that are not going to be matching with most of the clientele that comes through their door. But they're still just looked at as bodies and disposable, and women who are to be used and abused and discarded by men who think of them as just trash or whatever. And yet they're not trash, and they never are, even if they are in trashy professions. But I love that Hitchcock made sure that these are not, like, for example, Billy Whitelaw plays one of the friends of in it, and she's a very attractive woman. She's kind of played against her looks here, but if they had used her in it, because she's very striking and she's often played kind of glamorous women in films, if they had used her as one of the characters, but the women are not exactly great beauties, and bone structure and things like that, as typical might be of a Hollywood actress or ingenue or whatever you want to call them. And I think that's a commentary unto itself too, that even though Hitchcock did have some problems with women, obviously had major problems with Tippi Hedren, was torturing her during The Birds and making it clear he wanted to have sex with her while they're making Marnie. And then she never really did much after that. There was part of Hitchcock too that understood that, he had to counter that, at least a lot of that on screen, and in the way he was presenting these people. We never see them sexualized. That would, give to that same argument that every time some woman is raped or abused, it's always all she was asking for, or what was she wearing, or what was she saying, was she drunk? It's like, even if she's drunk and wearing thigh-high boots and stuff like that, it doesn't give a man a right to rape her and kill her and all those things. But it seems we always have to justify that every single time. Donald Trump says, well, Eugene Carroll wasn't my type. It's not even about type. It's about, people thinking that they have this ability or this right to sort of dominate women in any kind of way they want. And I don't want to hurt in the president necessarily. I'm not equating him with Bob Rusk here, but it's funny how I think the themes that Hitchcock is hitting at here in Frenzy have been around since the dawn of time, and they're even with us in this tremendously modern world that we live in.
Yeah, and the funniest thing is like when you were mentioning how he doesn't cast the usual type of woman, I thought, the funniest thing is that the one woman that he did cast that kind of looks like his usual blonde that's like the lead, she plays one of Blaney's friends' wives who does not get hurt in the movie,
Right.
and is actually very oppressive towards Blaney staying at her place, which
That's right.
I was on her side. I'm like, I don't want this guy here.
Yeah. I mean, Billy Whitelaw's
murder.
character of Hetty Porter is actually kind of the voice of reason here. Which, by the way, it's a little bit of trivia for your fans and followers.
Yeah.
But 4 years later, she played Mrs. Baylock in The Omen. So
wow. That's right. Yeah.
This very beautiful sort of known ingenue who then, as she matured a little bit, got more into, for lack of a better term, character roles or different kinds of performances. But again, they played against her looks there. I mean, she had those striking eyes, which were scary and very much used to effect as the protector of Damien. But there again, they were sort of playing against her looks here. And again, to your very point, they play against that here. She's kind of this angry voice of reason who makes more sense in it, even though she might be having the typical genes or the sort of qualities that would make for a more of the leading lady kind of person.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing about this movie is that it was sort of like a return to form for Hitchcock.
Yeah, right.
Because he made a lot of movies about people who were wrongfully accused and on the run. So it's like he was kind of mixing stuff from like North by Northwest with Psycho and really kind of making like one of his best movies, in my opinion. And it was his penultimate film. It's.
I also have to say you hit the nail on the head there too, because I think, Mike, one of his great hallmarks is I think he does these men who are characters, if you will, and mostly they're men, of course, but they get involved in circumstances that so spiral out of control, which is, the poster for Vertigo, the poster for Frenzy, as we talked about. And yet it's presented as fairly believable, like North by Northwest is ludicrous. And yet it's, as you're watching, it's like, well, I guess he would be undercover in the train station, pretending to be the porter just to get out. And she would help him, even though they just slept together after meeting and barely knowing each other. Wow. But, same here where, Blaney is checked into an insane asylum and, he's plotting how he's going to get out. And you're wondering, man, this guy was just looking for $10 or, and then recommended that he gamble it to turn it into 50 quid, if you will. And he doesn't. And he's mad about that. And he's frustrated and but then he turns into, hey, you think your day is bad? It's going to get worse because they're going to think you did a murder. They're going to put you in the psycho ward. And then, at the very end, you're not even sure, is he going to get away with that? Because the inspector comes in and, sees him basically red-handed right there in the bedroom with the corpse in the bedroom that he just discovered seconds later. But thank God that Oxford is a smart inspector and he kind of, says, like, I know what's going on.
Hear the footsteps.
Here's the footsteps coming up with the big thunk. Thunk, because Rusk is coming with this ridiculous, oversized trunk so he can get the body in there and get it out of there. And that, I just love too that's how it ends with that curd line and with the three kind of men, just the main characters standing there going like, what the heck? And yet we know it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's funny because in the 1966 novel that the movie's based on, Goodbye Piccadilly, Farewell, Leicester Square. I don't know. I'm
Leicester Square.
Okay.
It's not funny. It's spelled like Leicester, but it's Leicester Square.
He doesn't get caught. And he gets away with it in the book. And I thought, man, that would be interesting if Hitchcock did that. Because the funny thing that Hitchcock does with this movie is that he puts in the tropes of his usual films, but he plays them opposite. Where Blaney's like the guy who's wrongfully accused. Mostly those characters have their stuff together, although they're under a tremendous amount of stress and they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
But Blaney in this film, he's like, I'm going to go get drunk. I don't know what to do.
He's
I'm
a
going to find this
mess.
girl. Yeah, like he's a total mess compared
He's
to
almost
these
walking
guys.
into it without even having to be shown the door.
Yeah.
Unlike Cary Grant's ad executive in North by Northwest, who even when he's being threatened and made to get drunk and get into a car, there's still a little bit of that Cary Grant, I've got it together kind of debonair quality to him that makes it fun. I mean, that's more of a fun movie than this one, which is a little bit more of a nasty one. But that's what I love about Hitchcock, is that man who somehow finds himself in this problem, in this trouble, and then it keeps getting worse. And that's good screenwriting too, that as well as good direction, that it can make you believe it, even though it spirals very quickly out of control.
This one was sort of like his most realistic film in a way. I mean, it's still kind of surrealistic. One thing I liked that he did was you kind of think that Russ that he's a smart villain, but then when he realizes that he left the pin in the girl's hand, there is that comedic sequence where he's, in the truck with the potatoes and he's like, oh, how do I get break the fingers? Right. And, it's like now he's leaving his fingerprints all over the case. The body falls out of the truck. And he kind of like stumbles out and he's like trying to fix his hair at the last minute. Like, you kind of go, oh yeah, this guy is sort of like any other killer. They make obvious mistakes, and I mean, it would have been interesting if he didn't get caught, because the movie and the book is very inspired from Jack the Ripper.
Right.
And it would have fallen more to that style, but I thought it was fantastic. Strong recommendation. If you haven't seen Frenzy, go see it. Don't watch it with your family, because it's not a usual Hitchcock movie. How many Guinnesses would you give Frenzy?
Well, if we're going to go over to the United Kingdom and get out the Guinnesses, I'm going to give it 4.
There you go. 4 it is for you. And I got to say, all right, now I'm just doing a Cockney accent. Hello there, Governor. I'm giving it 4 stars as well. I like Hitchcock. Yeah, I like. Yes, I do. It has some flaws, but guess
That's
what?
That's a good voice. That's a good character. I like it, Mike.
I'm just doing Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, if he can do it, I can do it. But no, I
Mary.
Yeah, like there's definitely some sexism in the movie, and it's definitely problematic with Hitchcock's past. But you can kind of see how it was sort of like his most personal film in a way, because he is going back to his childhood, to London, and even the streets he's filming on. That's the market that he grew up on, because I think his parents were like grocers or something like that.
Yeah, and it's very gritty. It's a very much the location work, and it's very much. I'm not saying that Hitchcock does a lot of stuff in the studios, but even like the rear screen projection during car scenes and things that are clearly Hollywood sets. I mean, even they created the set obviously for Mount Rushmore at the end of North by Northwest, but this is really shot by and large in, I think, actual locations through and through. And he rose to that occasion. He did it very well, and it plays. And I think the city almost becomes another character in a way here.
Oh yeah, especially in the opening credits with like the very lavish music and the helicopter shot. It's like his way of saying I'm back home. And now with the release of the Hays Code, I can do whatever I want. And fantastic. But transitioning from movies about rape and murder are movies about little kids. Oh God, that's a horrible transition. But anyway,
they're both about inhumanity, dare I say. Even if the people treated inhumanely are robots. It's about man not doing well by his fellow man or fellow AI.
Yes, and AI, artificial intelligence, I think, is one of Steven Spielberg's best movies and one of his most misunderstood movies,
Totally.
which makes a lot of sense because Stanley Kubrick originally was going to direct it. And then at a certain point, Kubrick got, he was going to make a Holocaust film, but then Spielberg made Schindler's List and he just went, well, now I can't. So that movie's way better than mine. And in that process, I think somewhere afterwards, Kubrick approached Spielberg and he said he gave him like his like 60 pages of notes or his treatment
Mhm.
or whatever, and he gave him his storyboards and he said, look, this is more towards your sensibilities than it is mine. And the movie is sort of a mixture of both directors' sensibilities, where you have Kubrick's sort of cynicism towards society, seeing the ugly side of humanity and how we're self-destructive. And then you have Spielberg's sentimentality with, childlike innocence and family and separation that harkens back to his own childhood, with his parents separating, which he quite literally did, with Meet the Fables when he said, all right, fuck the
Mhm.
allegories. I'm just telling you my story.
Yeah.
And with this film, people said it was uneven, it didn't work, and particularly the ending, which I have notes as to what that ending actually was and why that ending is designed to make you cry. And it makes me cry like a baby every time I see it. And you know what? It's not overly sentimental
Yeah,
like
I
people
think
think.
those critics are
It's,
very wrong, to be perfectly blunt about it.
yeah,
I think they started to type um, Spielberg around the time of E.T. because
yeah,
it was so child focused, and Elliot is the main character. He's a 13-year-old boy,
yeah,
and there is a certain amount of childlike awe in a lot of Spielberg's work. I mean, even the way that the Richard Dreyfuss character looks up
mhm,
at the sky with all this sort of sense of awe in Close Encounters, even though he's leaving his family and becoming sort of a deadbeat dad on the run and abandoning his family. But I think Spielberg has always blended a lot of that with toughness. There's a
yeah.
toughness to E.T. I mean, E.T. almost dies in it. Richard
That
Dreyfuss
shot
gives up.
of him like in the ditch where
Oh
he's
yeah,
like, oh,
exactly. Richard
yeah,
Dreyfuss ends up abandoning his family. Spielberg isn't glossing over these things or shirking away from it. I
yeah,
think AI, despite the fact that it's about a family and this boy who wants to be a human and wants to be
yeah,
part of it, and sort of the obviously a sort of modern take on Pinocchio. In
yeah,
fact, Kubrick apparently, when he kept talking about this movie, called it Pinocchio. That was just
yeah.
what
He
he
never
would
called it
call it.
AI. Yeah,
But I mean, that says something about Kubrick, that he wanted Spielberg to do it, because I think Spielberg
yeah,
recognized that he was great with children and those kind of themes, but he could also be tough, and he could, he's a consummate filmmaker,
yep,
like Kubrick was too. But as I watched AI the first time, and I've seen it 2 or 3 times since then, um, I do not find it to be really sentimental at all. I find the
yeah,
character of David to be sentimental in the sense that he has this sort of Pollyanna version of what a family should be like, and he wants to be
mhm,
part of that at all costs. And he's thinking that this blue fairy that he knows from the Pinocchio story is somehow going to grant him this wish. But at every point, I think Steven Spielberg reminds us of how tough and brutal and vicious and unforgiving this world is. My God, the
mhm,
mother drops him off in the middle of the woods to fend for
mhm,
himself after he's had some trouble with the family. None of it really David, the AI's fault. Um, and we see all of these other robots, or I think they're called mechas here. Is that what they're called? I
yes,
think
yeah. You got it
who have
right.
been discarded for whatever reason. And again, it reminds me of pick your allegory, whether it's abandoned children, pets returned
Mhm,
to the animal shelter because he barks too much. Well, fucking learn how to be a good parent to a pet, and the dog won't bark so much. But no, it's the dog's problem, so we return it, or we leave it out in the parking lot, and leave it in a box, and those kind of horror stories you hear about. Same with all these robots who aren't regarded as characters, as human
mhm,
beings, and even though they're so evolved and so advanced, hence the term AI as the title, that they really are. They're thinking, feeling people, in just happen to be robots, but that's how
yeah,
we've advanced in this future. Um, and it's a tough film. I mean, you cried at the end. I was shook all the way through this film, and
yeah,
just feeling like my heart was being uh, wrecked, not because of, oh, it's so treacly and maudlin. Not at all. It's because Spielberg is taking a very unflinching look at how cruel people can be, whether they're, back in the days of the Holocaust and Schindler's List, or, mayors of towns willing to let children be killed because he wants to make money for their 4th of July weekend, or in the very far future where robots are now the next slave and or secondary group, like immigrants or whatever, that we can be prejudiced against. And I think Spielberg's a much tougher filmmaker than a lot of people have given him as his reputation. And I think these critics were very wrong about this. I will say this, I don't know if you found out this when you do your research, because you do excellent research, my friend. But in the year of 2001, both of the Tribune movie critics at the time, the main critic, Michael Wilmington, and the number 2, Mark Carroll, picked AI as the best film of the year.
Wow.
And they were both very smart, very learned men. I like both of them, and I think they were very well respected throughout the world and in the industry. They wrote for Film Comment magazine and books and different things, and they both picked this as the best film that year. So there were some people who got it, some people who recognized it. Too many people didn't. But I tell you, as we talked about before we went on, I think this film has built its reputation has only gone up since then.
Yeah. Roger Ebert originally gave it 3 stars, and then he went back and he gave it 4 stars. And this movie is very similar to Kubrick's work, where, and I'm not just talking about like stylistically, but how it was embraced critically, because when it first came out, it wasn't panned, it was mixed, a lot like Kubrick's movies were.
Right.
And then years and years later, people have gone back and they've gone, oh, this is actually pretty good. Maybe we were wrong about it. And the biggest misconception of the film is that Spielberg went full sentimental with the last 20 minutes, and that was his ending. Wrong. That was actually Stanley Kubrick's ending. That Spielberg barely changed a thing. And there is one tidbit I did find out from today's research, that Kubrick did have trouble figuring out what the ending was. And I would say that I could kind of see that, but there's a lot of misconceptions with the ending. One, the aliens in the end are not aliens. They're super advanced robots. So when Jude Law's character, Gigolo Joe, tells Haley Joel Osment, David, in the film, they made us too fast, too many, and at the end of the world, all there's going to be is us. He was right. And then what happens is that here's where everyone goes, oh, this is ridiculous. And I can understand, but think of it this way. When the super advanced robots come in, revive David, bring the blue fairy to life, and then resurrect his mother just from a flock of hair and instantaneously bring his house back, that never really happened. They put it in his head. Yes. When he's standing like in the little like oval area and he's talking to Meryl Streep's Blue Fairy, and like one of the Ben Kingsley robots says, give him what he wants. They're literally saying, put an image in his head where he thinks this is happening, because it's not a sweet, kind, lovable ending.
It's a tragic ending.
It's a sad,
it's a tragic ending. It's like his last meal. It's like a prisoner's last meal.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's been imprisoned underwater for 2,000 years?
Yes.
I mean, what? I mean, and then, that's just tragic right there, that he's just been stuck in this nether sort of limbo, if you will.
We are in a cage.
In this cage, and then finally they say, look at, this is what he's been living for. We now have the advanced technology to at least give it to him. Let's give it to him, and then let him finally, shut down, and let's give him his dream. And it is just that. It is a dream. It is not, we get so used to hearing term living the dream, or my dream has become reality. Most people, that never happens, and even if you do succeed and fulfill your dream, what happens then? Mary Steenburgen wins the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress
Mhm.
in 1981, I think it was, for Melvin and Howard, and her Academy Award speech is like, well, I guess I have to get a new dream now. Well, she's been a major actress, but she's not been a major star for all those years. Nobody talks about her in the same breath as Kate Blanchett and Meryl Streep and those people. So, she got an Oscar when she was in her 20s, but, where do you go from there? It's tricky. But I think what this movie is saying is that David has been determined and sort of driven through his programming
Mhm.
to be a member of this family and fit in. And
Mhm.
whether we're programmed that way as people who stay with bad parents or bad family members, or feel that we have to cling to family units and stuff, even if they're wrong or not right and dysfunctional, we do. But this character is determined and dogged to do it because that's what his programming is, and that's his dream. And at the end, they give him that dream, but it's a short one, and it's one night, and
Yeah.
it's one illusion of him finally getting what he was wanting all this time, and then it's done. I'm with you. I bawled at the end of that.
Mhm.
I still get choked up when I think about Teddy, who is his constant companion, and really his only kind of brother and or parent, caution, like, David, I don't
Yeah.
think that's what you should do here. I love that. And it's from this little teddy bear, which is supposed to be like almost a comfort animal, comfort toy. But, David gets on the bed with him, and he's going to sit there and stay with him until he goes to sleep. And
Yeah.
David will too. And they both will end with this, but it's their last sort of illusion of family. He's with his mom. He's with his best friend, David. They're all in this happy, everybody feels comfortable in their bed kind of thing. And it breaks your heart.
Yeah, because this kid had nothing, and I'm gonna play the clip because this makes me cry, and maybe you'll see me cry. No, you.
Okay. I'm going to watch when you come back, Mike.
I actually do have a clip in my AI video I did with Matt Fagerholm years ago, and at the end it has me like bawling to the movie. and I
Oh,
recorded it.
wow.
I will exploit myself. I don't care.
I love that.
But
Not that you
anyways,
explain yourself. I love that you just show that emotion.
yeah. But thank you. Here is the clip where I think audiences were going, "Ugh," but I was going throughout the movie. Here we go.
I love you, David. I do love you. I have always loved you.
Man, what a performance from Haley Joel Osment. He doesn't say a word, and
Mm,
he's just breathing, and that tear slowly goes
yeah.
down. And the tragedy with that ending is that, and you described it precisely the way I wanted to say, is that his programming, which was done by Professor Hobby, played by the late William Hurt, he lost his son years ago,
Right.
and he made David in the image of his son. But the
Mhm,
problem is we can't bring back the people that we love, and we can't
mhm,
force someone to love
mhm.
us.
Right.
And we live a lot of our lives in grief and loss. I mean, now that I'm turning 40, a lot of people that I love are dying. And
Mhm,
whenever I watch this movie, it just reminds me of how quickly that can be gone and how you have to embrace it and love it when you have it. But what happens when you are designed in a way where you are designed to be unconditionally loving, where he doesn't sort of put together the fact that Monica threw him in the woods and gave him a bunch of money, and she sort of did it out of mercy because Henry was just like, "Well, screw him, take him to the factory and dismantle him. I don't care." That's why he never really loved Henry. Although it was weird that he never loved Henry. I would say that's one plot hole because he's designed to love everyone, but like at the end when they're narrating it, he's saying there was no Henry, there was no Martin, and you're thinking, yeah, I guess he hated those guys, which was a little like,
Well, I also think maybe what the suggestion here is, and they
yeah,
do this in all these movies of AI, is I mean, hell, they did it with the Scarecrow and the Wizard of Oz. They always evolve. The
Yeah.
Scarecrow says, "I don't have a brain." Well, he's the one thinking all the way through, from taking the Tin Man's axe and hitting the rope so the chandelier falls on the witch's guards, to other things about looking for Dorothy in the castle and stuff. And robots are always changing. I mean, I think Ava is using her interviews with Caleb in Ex Machina to get a sense of who he is and how she can use him to achieve her means of being able to keep on living and maybe escape this prison that her maker has made for her, but also get a sort of lay of everything and just humanity and stuff here. And I think David, while programmed to be a contributing member and a loving member of the family, probably turns against the men in the family because they weren't very kind to him. And that helps his, whatever you want to call them, his, circuitry evolve and sort of learn. It's almost like, just because they're programmed one way doesn't mean they're going to do the same thing over and over again, thinking that they're going to get the same result. So, but I, again, just going back to that, yes, the John Williams music is very moving and sweet and heart pulling at your heartstrings. And, that moment is idyllic, but it's not real. And the reason it's there is because the advanced species or machines, as you said, have a sense of humanity to them, to know that, this is at least something we can give him after all this time and all this desire. And why not let him have that one fantasy? That's what dreams are for anyway. That's where we can be king of the world or the next great American Idol or whatever we want it to be. And I just find it tremendously sad, but at least he got that. I mean, if he was stuck just in the bottom of the water, still sort of semi-conscious or wondering if he was ever going to get out, that would be even sadder. But at least this gives him the illusion of it. It also reminds me of Star Trek. Are you a Star Trek fan at all, Mike?
No, but I know about Wrath of Khan.
Well, that's a great movie. Well, I'll just tell you quickly. The second pilot that Roddenberry wrote for NBC to get the show approved was called The Menagerie, and it's 2 parts. And he took a bunch of stuff from the original pilot that he had, and he turned it into a different story where this character of Captain Pike, who's now deformed, wants to go back to where he was happiest, and was on this planet where they were the aliens were studying their specimens, different people from different planets, and seeing how they responded to reality versus illusion. And at the end, Pike is taken back to the planet and given the illusion of being himself again, a strapping, tall, regular functioning human being. And the alien talks to Captain Kirk at the end, and he goes, I know that you have chosen reality for your life. Captain Pike has the reality he has chosen, even though it's fantasy. And then the alien advises Kirk, or wishes him well, I guess is maybe the better term. May yours be as happy and productive as his is. And I think that's what this is. This is the last moment of humanity for this character that has been treated so inhumanely throughout the entire film, from those who were supposed to love him to other people to, I mean, my God, when they go to the
flesh fair,
they're all just being sold or destroyed. It's like, I mean, that, I defy any critic or fan out there to say, oh yeah, that's Steven Spielberg being maudlin and sentimental. Hardly. It's tough. And I mean, this is the guy who also did,
Schindler's List, Munich, Private Ryan.
I don't think this guy is afraid to show you the harshness of man's inhumanity to man. But at the same time, there is this lacquer of fantasy to it, because this boy wants to be real, just like Pinocchio does. But Pinocchio is also a very tough movie too. Even as a story, it's a very tough film. Guillermo del Toro's movie a few years back, when he won the Oscar for animated feature, is a very tough movie. But I think it's a beautiful movie as well, and it's an incredibly moving film. And I think about this film almost as much as I do some of the films that are my absolute favorites of all time, because there is so much to think about.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I own the movie. I still have the 2-disc DVD.
Nice.
Oh, wait, is a disc in there? Oh, the second disc I was watching.
There you go.
But
it's in your machine, sir.
It's in my PlayStation.
Be nice to that machine.
Yeah, well, that's the main thing. Is
it may be obsolete soon, but be nice to it now.
Yeah, there are 2 things I wanted to point out. One is I will never, ever, ever forget the audience reaction after I saw that movie. The theater was packed, and I left, and I just felt extraordinarily moved. I go to the bathroom, and there's like these 2 bros with like backwards hats and flip-flops on. And they go, that was so stupid. Why was he praying to that statue for 2,000 years? And I just thought, because he wasn't designed to know any better. Like a
Exactly.
kid,
They
they
missed
don't
the point of the
understand
film.
reality. Yeah.
They missed the point of the
And I
film.
was much younger than them. And these guys, well, whatever, they're morons. But I shouldn't say that. Someone has a
But
differentiating opinion.
isn't it interesting that the robots here are the ones who not only have the humanity, but I dare say they almost have the conviction as well. I mean, Teddy's not there to be a plaything. He's there to be kind of his guardian.
Yeah.
And he is right until the end. I am going to stay with you, David. And through the end of that fantasy, because that is him fulfilling his role. And he's under the water with him in the car or whatever for those centuries as well. And, David is trying to be a loving son and being part of this family. And everybody else we see in it who's human, they're throwing away. It's a discarding society. We throw away everything. We don't like this anymore, so we throw it away. We can't get anything out of this anymore, so we just discard it. And we're too casual about friends and relatives and jobs, and everything is disposable. And we just are cavalier. I mean, to me, when I was watching this, one of the reasons I was crying too is I had pets at the time, 2 cats, and I loved them like they were children. And I saw this very much as a metaphor of all those animals who end up in shelters or end up starving on the side of the road and thinking, unless they're feral, somebody left that pet on the side of the road. And what kind of person does that? What kind of pet lover is there? How does that person ever be a pet lover? And then they turn around and say, well, I'm not going to try to figure out how to stop the dog from barking, or, oh, the dog got sick, so now I return him because I don't want to take care of a sick dog. No, you signed up for it. And it's so funny. Like, I remember reading stories about after 101 Dalmatians, everybody was wanting to get Dalmatian dogs. But Dalmatian dogs are tricky to take care of, and they're not the most easily trained, and some are returning. And I think when they did the DVD version of it, they actually put a warning on it, or somewhere they were saying, do not buy Dalmatians because of this, and just caution against, like, don't use the love and emotion of this to turn you into a foolish pet owner when you're not ready for it, because Dalmatians are complicated as in any kind of pet. But that's what this reminded me of it, and it really got to my heart. But it was not like, oh, maudlin pulling on the heartstrings. It was like, oh, this is it made me feel less and less about my fellow man. And that's what's truly heartbreaking. I think that's where your tears come from, Mike. And it's moving that David finally got his fantasy, but it's also terribly tragic that he had to wait so long for it, because no human being could give it to him.
Yeah, because the saddest thing is people are like, oh, it's such a sentimental ending. I'm like, the world fucking ended, and he's underwater. Like, you see his corpse, like, and and then they have to they put their art, like, when they put their hands in front of him. I think that's when they put the visions in him. But
and see, the hopeful is too, like, see, if they could do it, maybe we can evolve too. It's the same old lesson of Scrooge. It's like, you're never too old to turn over a bad habit. Teach an old dog new tricks, if you will. So maybe that's the upbeat part of it, but I think it's a very sad and multi-layered ending, but it's certainly not sentimental goo as they would tend to want to paint it as.
Well, it is, and it's the funniest thing about this movie that's very misconstrued is that the darker parts of the movie were Spielberg's ideas, and the lighter parts were Kubrick's, and people would never think that. That's that's why I think Kubrick ultimately gave it to Spielberg. Well, what happened was Kubrick died, and then his wife, I want to say Vivian, but I think that's his daughter. I think Christine Kubrick or something like that. She's the girl who sings at the end of Paths of Glory. She approached him as well as, like, the original screenwriter for the film, and they gave it to Spielberg to direct it, and to honor his friend, he did. And it's a challenging film because it is sort of like it was so ahead of its time. I mean, just think about excuse me, I'm dying. But think about the opening when you have Ben Kingsley narrating, and he talks about where the lions weep, and it talks about the polar ice caps melting, and how global warming is taking effect, and how we're going to be underwater. And now I look at this movie and I go, is it? I think it's too late for us now. We're gonna be where the Lions.
It is, and we talked about
know?
it 14 years ago or 12 years ago. They said we had
Yeah.
12 or 14 years, I think it was, to fix this, and we haven't even talked about it because America made a wrong turn as the world leaders for the last decade of political leadership, and I think we've now lost that. And you know, I pity the newer generations like you. You're considerably younger than me, and those even younger than you. Like, what kind of world are they going to be left with? But you know, it shows even here, though it's well into the future. Again, we are a very rash and unthinking and disposable kind of society. The fact that they just throw these people away. There's this one great shot where you see one of the mechas running towards the camera when they're out and they're being hunted in the woods and hiding and stuff. And she looks right to the camera, and I think if I'm doing it correctly, she does this, and then she hears noise and goes like this, and you see her face is removed. And at first, she seems like an ingenue, a young girl in trouble, and we look at her that way. But then we see what she really is, and you know that's all we see of her in it. Really, there's not too much more. But what is her story, and how did she come to this? You know, David is one of a million Davids in this story that were for some reason just abandoned. And
chilling scene.
It's just chilling, all this stuff. And you know, the thing I think that Kubrick recognized in Spielberg, and I think people who talk about Spielberg need to recognize in him, is that I don't think there's a better technical director today. And if there are, they've equaled him, but I don't think they're better. You know, but Spielberg has, I think, been a consummate storyteller, and clear stories and very clear themes, and committed to those themes no matter what. Sure, there's been stuff where there's a childish sense of awe and wonder, and maybe stuff that's lighter fare, but then he's gone darker as well. And you know, as much as he's known as a great technician with special effects and CGI and knowing how to edit and place the camera and do all the, you know, below the line kind of things necessary to make a film great. John Williams put his name on the map for everybody to know as a household name. Spielberg is a consummate storyteller. He knows how to develop characters. He knows how to tell a coherent story, to advance the plot, to make us think, to get great performances out of actors. And he does that here on all those examples that I just said, I think makes him great. And this is one of those films that showcases all of that.
I think this film was like an amalgamation of all of his best traits, but it was so challenging and so Kubrickian that it wasn't fully embraced by audiences.
This is also oh, good, Mike. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, because you mix these sentimental elements, but then you have like scenes where robots are getting graphically murdered, and there's like prostitutes getting killed, and there's the end of the world, and there's all this really heavy stuff. And then you get to that ending where people thought it was just complete fantasy bullshit. Now, admit, if that didn't just happen in his head, even I think that's some bullshit, you know. But I think that maybe one day I'll ask Spielberg about it, and he'll tell me, no, it's actually not in his head. And I'll be like, oh, really? Damn it.
No, it's. I think you're left to know that it's them creating an illusion for him, even if it's they were physically able to make it physically happen. It's still an illusion, and it is not real, because he's not with his mother. She has died centuries earlier, and it's a terrible ending. He's been through hell and all kinds of water, let alone high water. But I mean, you know, the film is a little bit long. It's, I think, 146 minutes, and you know, there was still a lot of movies that back in those days weren't that long, and you know, people, I think, resented movies that told a longer story sometimes here and there. But I don't know. It's just one of those where I think Spielberg has been ahead of his time. Kubrick has been ahead of his time. Hitchcock was ahead of his time. And sometimes that means that audiences take a while to catch up with you. And that includes the critical community, which, other than you and me and some others, including Mr. Wilmington and Mr. Carroll, didn't quite see it. And, you know, even Roger Ebert had to go back and look at it again and go, like, I was a star off.
Yeah. Well, that's why I liked Roger, because he could change his mind about
that's
movies.
right. He could see things differently. And I tell you, it's funny too, because sometimes he got things, I think, pretty wrong. Like both he and Siskel hated The Usual Suspects. which is
Mm.
so funny. Roger Ebert famously hated Blue Velvet. Now,
Oh
I don't think
yeah.
he came around on that one. I don't know if he came around on The Usual Suspects, but he was a better than most critics in saying, "Hey, with time, I see this film through different eyes now, and I undersold it."
Yeah.
But this one, I think, deserves its burgeoning reputation as the years go on, and I think it's in the top tier of Spielberg films.
Yeah, I think it really should be revisited. And the
It
reason I
might be his
know,
last great film. I mean, I think this and Munich are the last
yeah, I
two
was,
really great films. And Munich was underappreciated too. It was nominated for
Mhm.
Best Film that year, but I don't think people appreciate how tough that movie was either. And he was, you think about what's going on with Israel today, and I think Spielberg
Mhm.
was saying the same thing, like, "Hey, when you go out for revenge, it kind of kills everybody."
Yeah, it's a very simplistic message of violence begets more violence, but it gets much more into the intricacies. It gets much more into the details of what spurs that violence and that hatred. And Spielberg's amazing because one year he directed Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the
Yeah,
same
92,
year.
I think. Yep.
And then in 2005, he
Or was it
directed
92?
War of the Worlds and then Munich in the same
Yeah,
year.
that's right. That's
The
right.
guy's a machine. I don't know how he does it, and he doesn't do cocaine or anything, so I don't know how he's staying up and doing that. Michael
Yeah,
Bay
well,
does. He has it on his sets. Ooh, I
well,
should have done
I
that
think
probably.
I think it was 93 that Jurassic Park and Schindler's List came out, but I think Spielberg is not only an artist, but I think he is a fan. I think
Mhm.
he loves what he has chosen as profession, and it's his hobby, it's his life, it's his love, it's his
Yeah.
passion, and it's his skill set. Obviously, he's become over the years more and more of a terrific filmmaker, but as well as a craftsman, and he's pushed the forefront of special effects and many kinds of things like that. But he's one of those rare individuals who is a genius enough for his art, but he also is a fan enough of the world that he has chosen to do his art that it makes him this truly extraordinary person in that field.
Yeah, he has he has a childlike sensibility because he is like a child, but a very intelligent one, who and also emotionally he's an adult, as far as we know. But like he brings in his maturity and his innocence in this film, and it blends together beautifully. And I think it's a movie that should be much more revered, and it should be examined more. And yeah, it's one that I think people didn't get. I remember I saw it with my mom when I was a kid. She didn't get it, but I got it right away.
I
And
dare say too, Mike. I
yeah,
think we all know what the term AI means now. At the time, people
yeah.
didn't know, and that's why they had to name it AI, artificial intelligence.
So
But
did they
once
get it mixed
again,
up with A1?
yeah,
A1
exactly,
sauce. Yeah.
exactly. But once again, as somebody wasn't there a senator who called it A1 or something, and Twitter or X or whatever. Anyway, AI today is regarded as this great enemy, but AI is a
Hmm.
tool. The enemy are
Hmm.
the men and women using it for wrong reasons,
That's
nefarious
right.
purposes. I don't need AI to write ad copy or a next blockbuster movie or put art directors out of work who should be doing the production design for shows and such. I need AI that can work on my damn cell phone and get autocorrect every time. But every time I type TE, they think I'm writing Ted, and I don't have a single Ted in my roster of friends. So why they're wasting my time with Ted when I'm trying to say something else is beyond me. But if AI wants to be improved by man, that's how they can improve it. But let's not blame AI for taking away people's jobs and all those kind of things. It's men and women who are using it for the wrong purposes. It's a great tool, just as any tool is, but you have to treat that tool with respect and use it properly.
Yeah. Well, we're like Professor Hobby, where we have good intentions,
Yes.
but eventually it leads to dark places because Hobby wanted to bring love to families who didn't have, love, or maybe lost a child like he did. But the
Right.
problem is what happens when that child never grows up? Does he get traded to another family? what if he gains the knowledge because you gave him emotion? You did put limitations in his technology. Obviously, he's praying to an inanimate object for 2,000
Mhm.
years. But what happens when that child does one thing wrong? Such
Yeah.
as when he grabs Martin and he's trying to have him protect him because his pain sensors are going off when the kids are trying the knife on his arm. It's like, what happens when we do neglect them? And what happens when we neglect our own technology? Our own technology turns against us because we treated it like crap the way we treat each other. And that's sort of why Stephen Hawking was saying that AI is the greatest threat to man. And I would say, yeah, that is true. Probably, like, I would say global warming is the greatest threat to man, but
I think man is the greatest threat to man.
yeah,
Global warming is a symptom of the disease. The disease is man's inability to emotionally and intellectually
yeah,
come together and do the right thing.
yeah.
They'll always do the wrong thing for hubris, for greed, for
Mhm.
selfishness, whatever. And whether it's a nuclear, an atom being split, fire being able to, sort of manipulated, or AI being developed, the problems with them come from man misusing them.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting too, because if you wanted to connect, not that we're laboring to do so, but if you want to connect frenzy to AI, I
Mm.
think they are really about these sort of presentations of decorum and society and
Mm.
what we want to think is important to be perceived as
Yeah.
amongst our peers and the world in general. And yet, how a lot of times base the worst kind of emotions usurp that. Things may look right on the surface, but unless you're really a caring person for a robot or a child or women, or what the wealth of having a successful franchise or business in London does, you are misusing it, and
Mm.
because your emotions are not evolved as well as your acumen for business, wealth, whatever it is that you're living. You got to have intellectualism with the right mix of emotionalism.
Yeah. And
And I think that's where people go wrong. We can split the atom, but now we use it for bombs.
Mhm.
We have more money than, Elon Musk has more money. He could have eradicated starvation. He could have given
Yeah.
more money to the education department for the next 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. And we never have a teacher on the planet, let alone in this country, have to buy their own supplies for kids because they don't have any budget for it. But
Yeah.
instead, he wants to buy elections, and he
Yep.
wants to save on his taxes, and he wants to corner the market on the things that he's doing, whether it's a space program or whatever else. And as Jake Gittes asked of, the villain in Chinatown, how much better can you eat? How much more do you need? And he goes, well, it's about the future. It's about power. And yet, you still have to drink in the same water and breathe the same air and deal with people. And if you're ruining it for them, you're ruining it for yourself too. They never, ever figure that out.
That's right. I mean, once man gets power, they start to show their true colors. They discover who they really are without ever even knowing it,
That's
you
right.
know? And
And it's
that's
E.G. Marshall, the
yeah.
Penthouse Suite and Creep Show. He may
Yeah.
think he's untouchable because he runs the building, everybody kisses his ass, and he's the rich old Howard Hughes-esque character. And guess what? The bugs can still get to you.
Mhm.
They don't
Yeah.
they don't know that you're rich, and
Yeah.
they don't care.
Yeah. Well, the funniest thing is if you watch the Animatrix, what started the Matrix was that they had robots and there was this one robot, I think the first of the line, and they mistreated him and all the robots were just sick of being mistreated.
Yeah, sure.
So they said, "We're not going to be marginalized anymore. We're going to rebel." And in order to fight the robots, the humans literally clouded the sky because the sky was the solar source of their energy. And it's like, now that would be a movie. What if we showed a movie about how the Matrix became the Matrix, but you don't tell the audience
Mhm.
that it's a Matrix movie? They find out in the end. You
Yeah.
know, when they start plugging the people in and start designing the agents, you go, "Oh my god," and you realize we did it. You know, and
Right.
that,
It's the ending of the
yeah,
Planet of the Apes. You
yeah,
know, he's back home, and man fucked it up.
yep, that's right. When that Statue of Liberty shot says everything within one little, I mean, one of the greatest endings of all time. But
Yeah, I
that's
agree.
why, that's why AI is incredible, because it's a movie about humanity's inhumanity and where we're ultimately going to wind up, because we're going to develop technology too fast and we're not going to know what to do with it, and we're going to marginalize it. And then once we do, it could rise against us. Maybe our computers one day could become sentient and decide to flush our bank accounts, you know, or decide to cut our water or decide whatever. And it's because we didn't treat it right, you know. I
Mhm.
mean, you can treat your dog well, or you could be like Christine Nome and shoot it in the head. You know, it's up to you to it's up to you to be a good person. And I think that's what
And that's
both those
ultimately
movies,
the sign of
yeah.
genuine wealth. Like, what kind of human being are you? You know,
Mhm.
are you living the life of somebody who cares about their fellow man, or are you accumulating all these toys and money with very little regard for them?
Yeah. And I mean that I think that's the main theme in both these movies is people have to be better to each other,
Yeah.
you know, and not think about their own interests or try to uh take their own pain and
Taking the life
try,
of a woman or taking
yeah.
the life of a robot does
Yeah.
not make you more powerful or a better person.
Yeah, because we end up becoming God when we create robots. And I mean, I'm not even going to get into the whole God thing, but like, maybe we should think about how we could be better to each other rather than what's my ultimate reward for following these set of principles and rules that I've been taught throughout my life. But woo, we got deep, and I like that. But if you were to give AI some Guinnesses, 1 out of 4, how many would you give it? 4. I think it's a
Or again,
4
I'm
out.
going to get drunk on these two movies with you, my friend.
We're gonna have 8 Guinnesses each. Yeah. Hey, I there's a reason my show used to take place in a bar, but that's a whole other reason.
Oh,
But
that's funny.
I think I literally was drunk when I came up with the idea for the whole
Hey,
thing.
sometimes you're loose and goosey, and that helps you create. So go ahead. Anyway, I'll
But
justify your drinking for you.
yeah, that's all right. I don't drink too much anyways
Oh,
anymore. It's a
that's good. That's good.
mostly because I don't like having to pee all the time and having headaches. So, Jeff, what would you like to plug before you come on? Oh, and by the way, I gotta share your picture of Hitchcock on my
Oh, thank you.
socials. Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm Jeff York Chicago and Jeff York Caricatures on Instagram. My movie blog is the establishingshot.org. I also am Jeff York Chicago on TikTok, where I do 1 minute movie reviews with usually a caricature, because I only do the movies I like, and I only draw caricatures for the movies or shows that I am particularly moved by or compelled to. And you can contact me in all those places too if you want me to draw something for you or have a thought or two on, or even if you disagree with me on something. I had somebody the other day who got into my DMs and said, "You shouldn't be critiquing horror movies anymore. You don't get them." It's like, look, pal, I used to write horror movie reviews for the Examiners for 5
Yeah.
years, for the Examiner for 5 years, and I've seen too many horror movies. Maybe that's the problem, but I want logic in a good movie, whether it's a horror movie or not. And if there isn't logic in some of these, you know, genre pieces, they have to be criticized for it. But anyway, so that's where you can find me. I'm available plenty of places, and thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Was it a salty weapons fan who told you that?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Ah,
Yeah, he was
so
very
predictable.
upset with my review of weapons. I haven't had anybody come after me like that in some time, but one or two
Wow.
people dropped into my DMs, and this one guy said, you shouldn't review horror movies anymore. You don't get them."
That's how you know your work's working, because you start getting
Like, well, at least
reactions
he
out of
read it.
people.
At least he's
Yeah.
read the review, and
Yeah,
he's read a few of them
exactly.
to make this determination of me.
Yeah, I mean, I felt kind of the same way with weapons. Once Aunt Gladys came in, I just went, "Oh
Well, it turned from a really
no."
smart, palpable my
Mob
God,
mentality
kids are being
movie.
snatched kind of movie
Yeah.
into let's just have laughs about all this stuff and make
Yeah.
everything funny. And I didn't think any of that was funny.
Yeah, it wasn't funny. It was just awkward and weird.
A
And
parent
there I
dealing with
used
the
the
grief of their
word.
child being snatched. They don't know if he's being sex trafficked or killed or where he's at, and we're laughing at this. And then kids are bursting through glass windows, which would cut them into ribbons just so they can hunt down this crazy witch. I don't find any of that funny. I think it's all pretty disturbing, but
Yeah.
I know some people think they had to do it to relieve the tension and maybe relieve the tension that we're living in now, which I can see that as an angle on it. But when you're watching a movie like that, and I'm thinking the better ways they could have gone with that, that's why I criticized it. I don't think that's the way that film made sense to go. I don't know what in that material about child abduction would make somebody be so glib, but maybe there are those who are.
I felt like when I'm watching this, I'm like, oh, this is like The Hunt. And now I'm like, oh, this is like The Hunt if it was really stupid.
Yeah, like The Hunt is a better
Excuse
example
me.
of where somebody was, sort of being put upon by the mob mentality, to your point. But
Yeah.
at least these two movies,
Yeah.
hopefully they won't be coming after us on it. If they listen to your full show, they'll be like, I need to go and rent those movies. Those sound pretty good.
Yeah. And guys, if you liked what you heard, go check out ypareviews.com. The YPA stands for You'll Probably Agree. If you're on TikTok, YPA Review Chicago. Social media, YPA Reviews. I think I said YPA Reviews enough. You guys get the idea. Across, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, YPA Reviews. I said it enough. I'm sick of saying my own slogan. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeff, for coming on. And we'll let you know what our next movie is soonish, I guess.
Thank you.
But yeah, we'll let you know. But thanks, guys. And be nice to your computers or your computers will turn against you. Oh, and also just use a clip-on tie. All right, guys. Have a good one.